Richard Morrison had exactly 17 minutes to get to his meeting downtown. He glanced at his watch as he stepped into the elevator of his office building, already mentally rehearsing his presentation. The steel doors closed with a soft hiss and he descended into the parking garage beneath the building. It was a typical Tuesday morning. Rain had been falling since dawn, turning the city streets into rivers of brake lights and honking horns. Richard was grateful for his reserved parking spot just steps from the elevator. No need to get soaked like everyone else scrambling through the public lot. The parking garage was quiet at this hour. Most people had already arrived for work, and the concrete space echoed with the distant hum of ventilation fans. Richard's leather shoes clicked against the polished floor as he walked toward his black sedan. He was scrolling through emails on his phone, barely looking up when he heard it. "Don't get in the car." The voice was small but piercing, desperate. It echoed off the concrete walls and stopped Richard in his tracks. He looked up from his phone, confusion crossing his face. A little girl was running toward him. She couldn't have been more than 8 or 9 years old, her dark hair flying behind her as she sprinted across the garage. Her face was streaked with tears and her small chest heaved with the effort of running. "Sir, please, don't get in the car," she shouted again. Behind her, a woman was chasing after the child, calling out in Spanish and English. Richard recognized her immediately. It was Maria, one of the cleaning ladies who worked in his building. He'd seen her countless times, usually pushing a cart full of supplies or emptying trash bins late in the evening. But what was her daughter doing here, and why was she screaming at him? The girl reached Richard before her mother could catch her. She grabbed his sleeve with both hands, her small fingers clutching the expensive fabric of his suit jacket. Up close, he could see the genuine terror in her eyes. "This wasn't a prank or a game. Please, mister," she gasped, trying to catch her breath. "Something's wrong with your car. Don't get in, please." Maria finally caught up, her face flushed with embarrassment and panic. She immediately started apologizing, her words tumbling out in a mixture of English and Spanish. "Mr. Morrison, I'm so sorry. Sophia, let go of him right now. I don't know what's gotten into her. She's not supposed to be here. Her school had a problem with the pipes. They sent everyone home early, and I had no one to watch her, so I brought her here, and then she just ran off, and I'm so sorry." Richard held up his hand. His assistant had called him twice already, and his phone was buzzing with another incoming call. He should be annoyed. He should brush this off and get to his meeting. But something in the child's eyes held him. "Wait," he said, looking down at the girl still gripping his jacket. "What did you see, Sophia?" The girl's mother tried to pull her away. "Mr. Morrison, I'm so sorry. She's just playing. She has an active imagination. Please just go to your meeting. I'll take her." "No, Mama." Sophia pulled away from her mother's grasp. "I'm not making it up. There was a man by his car. A bad man. He was doing something under it." Richard felt something cold settle in his stomach. "What kind of man?" "I don't know. I'd never seen him before. He had a black jacket and a hat pulled down low. I was playing with my ball and it rolled under that car." She pointed at Richard's sedan. "When I went to get it, I saw his feet on the other side. He didn't know I was there." Maria was shaking her head, still trying to apologize. "Sir, children see things. They imagine things. I'm sure it was just someone from the building." "What was he doing?" Richard asked Sophia, ignoring her mother's protests. The girl's lip trembled. "He had tools. And he was putting something under the car. It had wires. Red and blue wires, and then he saw me looking and his face got really scary, and he told me to get lost or I'd be sorry, so I hid behind that big pillar over there." She pointed to a concrete support column about 20 feet away. "I watched him finish and leave, and then I saw you coming and I just knew something was really wrong." Richard's heart was pounding now. His assistant called again. He declined it. "Stay here," he told them both. "Don't move." He walked slowly to his car, his mind racing. This was probably nothing. Probably just a child's overactive imagination, like Maria said. But what if it wasn't? He crouched down beside the driver's side door and peered underneath the vehicle. At first he saw nothing unusual. Just the normal undercarriage of a car, grimy from city driving. Then he saw it, a small black box, no bigger than a cigarette pack, attached to the underside of the car near the fuel tank. Wires ran from it in different directions, red, blue, just like Sophia had said. And there was something else. A small LED light blinking slowly. Red, red, red. Richard's blood turned to ice. He stood up so fast he nearly hit his head on the car's frame. His hands were shaking as he pulled out his phone. "Get back," he told Maria and Sophia, his voice tight. "Get to the elevator now." Maria's eyes went wide. What is it?" "Just go, move." Richard was already dialing 911, backing away from his car. "This is Richard Morrison. I'm in the parking garage at 1847 Commerce Street. There's an explosive device attached to my vehicle. I need police and a bomb squad here immediately." The 911 operator's voice was calm, asking him questions, telling him to evacuate the area. Richard grabbed Maria's arm and pulled her and Sophia toward the elevator. Other people in the garage heard the commotion and stopped, staring. "Everyone needs to leave this garage right now," Richard shouted. "There's a bomb." The word bomb created instant chaos. People dropped their briefcases and ran for the exits. Car alarms started going off as people bumped into vehicles in their panic. Richard kept Maria and Sophia close as they rushed toward the stairwell. The elevator would be too slow. They burst through the stairwell door and started climbing. Sophia was crying now, clinging to her mother. Maria's face had gone pale with shock. "You saved my life," Richard said to the little girl as they reached the ground floor. "If you hadn't warned me." He couldn't finish the sentence. If he had gotten in that car, if he had turned the key in the ignition, he would be dead right now. This 8-year-old child, this brave little girl who barely knew him, had saved his life. Sirens were already wailing in the distance, growing louder. Police cars screeched to a halt outside the building. Officers in uniform rushed toward them, asking questions, clearing the area. More sirens. Fire trucks. An ambulance. Then came a large black vehicle with bomb squad written on the side. Men in heavy protective gear started unloading equipment. Richard found himself sitting on the curb outside his building, Maria and Sophia beside him. A police officer was asking Sophia questions, and the little girl was describing everything she'd seen. The man in the black jacket, the tools, the wires, the scary look on his face when he'd spotted her watching. Richard looked at this child, this brave little soul who'd risked approaching a wealthy stranger to warn him about danger. How many people would have done that? How many would have just walked away, not wanting to get involved? "Why did you warn me?" he asked her quietly while her mother talked to another officer. "You didn't have to. You could have just stayed hidden." Sophia looked at him with those big, serious eyes. "Because it was the right thing to do," she said simply. "My papa used to say that if you can help someone, you should. Even if it's scary." Richard felt something crack open in his chest. When was the last time he'd done something just because it was right? When was the last time he'd thought about anyone other than himself? A police detective approached them, notebook in hand. "Mr. Morrison, I'm Detective Williams. I need to ask you some questions. Do you have any enemies? Anyone who might want to hurt you?" Richard almost laughed. The list was probably longer than he wanted to admit. When you made your fortune by crushing competitors and buying out failing companies for pennies on the dollar, you made enemies, lots of them. "There might be a few people," he admitted. The detective nodded grimly. "We're going to need a list. And Mr. Morrison, you're very lucky. That little girl just saved your life." Richard looked at Sophia, who was now wrapped in a blanket someone had brought, sipping hot chocolate from a paper cup. Maria had her arm around her daughter, still looking shocked. Lucky didn't begin to cover it. The bomb squad worked for over 2 hours. Richard watched from behind the police barriers as men in thick protective suits moved around his car like astronauts on a dangerous moon. Maria and Sophia sat with him on a bench someone had brought out. They'd been told they couldn't leave yet. The police needed their statements. Richard had called his assistant and canceled everything for the day. How do you explain to someone that you're late because someone tried to blow you up? His phone kept buzzing with messages, but he ignored them all. None of it seemed important anymore. "I'm really sorry about all this," Maria said for probably the 20th time. Her hands twisted nervously in her lap. "Sophia shouldn't have grabbed you like that. I've been teaching her not to bother important people." Richard looked at her. Really looked at her. Maria was probably in her late 30s with tired eyes and calloused hands. She wore the same blue cleaning uniform he'd seen her in 100 times before, but he'd never really noticed the person wearing it. "Don't apologize," he said. "Your daughter is a hero. She saved my life." Sophia was quiet now, watching the bomb squad with wide eyes. She'd stopped crying, but she still looked scared. Richard noticed her sneakers were worn, the soles separating slightly from the fabric. Her clothes were clean but old, carefully mended in places. A bomb squad technician finally approached them. He'd removed his helmet and sweat dripped down his face despite the cool morning air. "We've secured the device," he said. "It's being transported to our facility for analysis, but I can tell you right now, Mr. Morrison, you're extremely lucky to be alive." "What was it?" Richard asked. "A crude but effective explosive device, wired to the ignition system. The moment you turned that key, it would have detonated. The placement was deliberate, designed to rupture the fuel tank. The explosion would have been significant." Richard felt sick. He could picture it. Turning the key, hearing the engine start to turn over, and then nothing. Just fire and twisted metal. "How did they know which car was mine?" he asked. "Your parking spot is reserved with your name on it. Anyone watching the building would know that's where you park every day. This wasn't random, Mr. Morrison. Someone studied your routine. They knew exactly when you arrived and when you left." The detective who'd questioned Richard earlier joined them. "Mr. Morrison, we need to talk about who might have done this. We're pulling security footage from the garage, but I need you to think carefully." "Who wants you dead?" It was a strange question to hear out loud. Richard had never thought of himself as someone people wanted to kill. "Dislike? Sure. Resent? Probably, but murder?" "I'm a businessman," Richard said slowly. "I've made some tough decisions over the years. Hostile takeovers, layoffs. I've bought struggling companies and broken them up for parts. That's how you succeed in my world." "Anyone in particular stand out?" The detective pressed. "Anyone who made threats?" Richard thought back over the past few years. There was the tech startup he'd acquired and then dissolved, putting 40 people out of work overnight. The family business he'd bought for a fraction of its worth when they were desperate, then sold the building for triple the price. The partner he'd forced out of his own company after finding discrepancies in the books. That last one stuck in his mind. "There's someone," Richard said. "Vincent Chen. We were business partners about 3 years ago. I discovered he was embezzling from our company. Small amounts at first, then larger sums. I built a case against him, forced him out, and sued him for everything he'd taken plus damages." "Did he threaten you?" "Not directly. But he lost everything. His house, his savings, his reputation. His wife left him. Last I heard, he was working as a night manager at a warehouse." Richard paused. "I made sure no one in our industry would hire him. I wanted to send a message about what happens when you steal from me." The detective wrote this down. "We'll look into Mr. Chen. Anyone else?" There were others. Richard listed them off, feeling uncomfortable as the list grew longer. The executive he'd publicly humiliated during a board meeting before firing her. The supplier whose contract he'd canceled without warning, bankrupting the small family operation. The investor he'd cut out of a deal at the last minute. "I'll need contact information for all of these people," the detective said. "And Mr. Morrison, I'd suggest you vary your routine for a while. Don't go places alone. Whoever did this failed today. They might try again." The words hung in the air. Someone wanted him dead badly enough to build a bomb. Someone was out there right now, maybe watching, wondering why he was still alive. Richard looked at Sophia again. The little girl had fallen asleep against her mother's shoulder, exhausted from the fear and adrenaline. Maria held her gently, stroking her hair. "What can I do for you?" Richard asked Maria suddenly. "To thank you. To thank Sophia, she saved my life." Maria shook her head quickly. No. You don't need to do anything. We're just glad you're safe." "Please," Richard insisted. "Let me do something, anything." Maria hesitated. "Really, Mr. Morrison, we don't need anything." Sophia did what any good person would do. But Richard noticed how Maria's eyes flickered to Sophia's worn shoes. He noticed the way Maria's uniform was faded from too many washings. He saw the tiredness in her face, the kind that comes from working too hard for too little money. Over the next hour, they gave their statements to the police. Sophia woke up and had to describe the man she'd seen again and again. She was patient, trying to remember every detail. The black jacket, the gray hat, the tattoo on his wrist that looked like barbed wire, his angry expression when he'd told her to get lost. A police artist came and worked with Sophia to create a sketch. Richard watched as the image took shape. A hard-faced man, probably in his early 40s, with cold eyes and a thin mouth. "Does this look like Vincent Chen?" the detective asked, showing Richard the sketch. Richard stared at the image. "It could be. Vincent was always thin, angular features. But he's aged since I last saw him. This could be him." The detective nodded. "We're sending officers to his last known address now." Finally, they were told they could leave. Maria stood up, gathering her things. I should get Sophia home. She's been through too much today. Let me give you a ride, Richard offered. It's the least I can do. Maria looked uncomfortable. We can take the bus. We always take the bus, please, Richard said. I insist. The truth was, Richard didn't want to be alone. He kept thinking about what would have happened if Sophia hadn't been there. If that ball hadn't rolled under his car. If she hadn't been brave enough to warn him. They ended up in a police cruiser. The officer offered to take them all home given the circumstances. During the ride, Richard learned more about Maria and Sophia in 30 minutes than he'd learned about any of his employees in years. Maria was a widow. Her husband had died 2 years ago from cancer. He'd been a construction worker, and they had no health insurance. The medical bills had wiped out their savings. Maria now worked 3 jobs to keep a roof over their heads and food on the table. She cleaned offices in the morning, worked at a grocery store in the afternoon, and did data entry from home in the evenings. 3 jobs? Richard asked, stunned. Maria nodded, looking embarrassed. It's what I have to do. Sophia needs a stable home. She needs to stay in her school. She's so smart, Mr. Morrison. Gets straight A's. I want her to have opportunities I never had. Sophia, sitting between them, perked up. I want to be a police detective when I grow up, she announced. Like on TV, I like solving mysteries and helping people. You'd make an excellent detective, Richard said. You certainly proved that today. They arrived at Maria's apartment building. It was in a rough part of town, the kind of place Richard's car GPS usually told him to avoid. The building was old, paint peeling from the walls, bars on the ground floor windows. This is us, Maria said, unbuckling Sophia. Thank you for the ride. Richard found himself getting out of the car, too. Can I walk you up? Make sure you get inside safely. Maria looked surprised but nodded. They climbed 3 flights of stairs. The stairwell smelled like old cooking oil and mildew. Some of the lights were burned out. Richard could hear televisions blaring through thin walls, babies crying, people arguing. Maria's apartment was small, maybe 600 square feet total. 1 bedroom that Sophia apparently shared with her mother, a tiny kitchen and a living room barely big enough for a worn couch and a small television. But it was spotlessly clean. The furniture was old but cared for. There were drawings on the refrigerator, Sophia's schoolwork. A shelf of library books. Would you like some coffee? Maria offered, already moving toward the kitchen. It's not fancy, but it's hot. Richard started to decline, then changed his mind. Yes, thank you. He sat on the couch while Maria made coffee in a dented pot on the stove. Sophia showed him her room, proudly displaying her bookshelf and the certificates on the wall. Honor roll. Perfect attendance. Student of the month. You really are smart, Richard said, looking at the certificates. Each one was framed in a cheap plastic frame but displayed with obvious pride. Mama says education is the most important thing, Sophia said. She says it's the way out, the way out. Richard understood what she meant. The way out of this neighborhood. This poverty, this constant struggle. Maria brought him coffee in a chipped mug. Richard sipped it. It was strong and bitter, nothing like the expensive espresso he drank at his office. But somehow it tasted better. Maria, he said slowly, I want to ask you something, and I want you to really think about it before you say no. She looked nervous. Okay. I want to set up an education fund for Sophia. College tuition, books, everything she'll need. Consider it my way of saying thank you for saving my life. Maria's eyes went wide. Mr. Morrison, I can't accept that. That's too much. Your daughter saved my life, Richard interrupted. Do you understand that? If she hadn't warned me, I'd be dead right now. My family would be planning my funeral. Instead, I'm sitting here drinking coffee alive because Sophia was brave enough to care about a stranger. Tears filled Maria's eyes. We don't need charity. It's not charity, Richard said firmly. It's a debt. A life debt. The most important kind. Sophia looked between them, confused. Mama, what's he talking about? Maria knelt down in front of her daughter. Mr. Morrison wants to help pay for your college, Mija. Really? Sophia's eyes went wide. Like I could go to a real university? Like they show on TV? The call came 3 days later. Richard was in his home office trying to work but mostly staring out the window. He had 2 security guards outside his building now, and his assistant had rearranged his entire schedule. He wasn't going anywhere alone anymore. Mr. Morrison, This is Detective Williams. We've made an arrest. Richard sat up straight. Who was it? Vincent Chen. We found him at a motel outside the city. He still had tools and materials in his room. Bomb-making supplies. And he confessed. He confessed? Just like that? The detective's voice was grim. He said he was glad to confess. Said he wanted you to know it was him. Wanted you to know how much he hated you. Richard felt cold. What exactly did he say? Mr. Morrison, I don't think... Oh, please. I need to know. There was a pause. He said you destroyed his life. That you didn't just fire him or sue him. You made sure he could never work again. Made sure everyone in the industry knew he was a thief. His wife left him. His kids won't speak to him. He lost his house, his savings, everything. He said he spent 2 years planning this. Watching you. Learning your routine. He wanted you to suffer like he suffered. Richard closed his eyes. He remembered Vincent. A nervous man, always sweating, always making excuses. Richard had found the discrepancies in the accounting by accident. Small amounts missing at first, then larger sums. He'd hired investigators, built an airtight case, then struck without warning. He'd never thought about what happened to Vincent after. The man had simply ceased to exist in Richard's world. What happens now? Richard asked. He'll be charged with attempted murder, possession of explosive devices, several other charges. He's looking at 20 years minimum, probably more. After the call ended, Richard sat in silence. 20 years in prison. Vincent's life was over. But then again, Richard had ended it 3 years ago, hadn't he? He'd just done it slowly, methodically, legally. He thought about what Sophia had said. My papa used to say that if you can help someone, you should. When had Richard last helped someone? When had he done anything that wasn't about making money or crushing competition? That night, Richard couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about the bomb, about Sophia's worn shoes, about Maria working 3 jobs, about Vincent Chen sitting in a cell, his life destroyed twice over. At 2 in the morning, Richard got up and went to his computer. He started searching. It didn't take long to find information about Maria Rodriguez. Public records showed the medical debt from her husband's cancer treatment. Over $200,000. She'd been making minimum payments for 2 years, barely making a dent in the principal. He found Sophia's school records. She really was brilliant. Straight A's in everything. Gifted program. Her teacher's comments glowed with praise. Exceptional student. Natural leader. Bright future ahead. What future, though? Even with the education fund Richard had promised, Maria was drowning. Working herself to exhaustion just to survive. How long before something broke? Before the stress became too much? Before Sophia had to drop out of school to help support them? Richard made a decision. The next morning he called Maria. Mr. Morrison? She sounded worried. Is everything okay? I need to talk to you. Can you come to my office today? Bring Sophia if she's not in school. I have work at the grocery store this afternoon, but I could come this morning. Is something wrong? Nothing's wrong. I just want to discuss something with you. It's important. When Maria and Sophia arrived at his office, they looked completely out of place. Maria wore clean but faded jeans and a simple shirt. Sophia wore her school uniform. They stood in the marble lobby, staring up at the tall ceilings and expensive artwork, clearly uncomfortable. Richard met them at reception and brought them to his office. Sophia's eyes went wide at the view from the floor-to-ceiling windows. You can see the whole city from here, she breathed. Richard smiled. It's a nice view. Though he realized he rarely looked at it anymore. It was just background noise to his work. He gestured for them to sit on the leather couch. Maria perched on the edge, nervous. Sophia sat beside her, taking everything in with curious eyes. I've been thinking a lot since Tuesday, Richard began. About what happened. About what Sophia did. And I've realized something. The education fund isn't enough. Maria's face fell. Mr. Morrison, if you've changed your mind, we understand. We never expected... No, Richard interrupted. You misunderstand. It's not enough because your daughter saved my life, and an education fund, while generous, doesn't really change your daily reality. You're still working 3 jobs, still drowning in debt, still one emergency away from disaster. Maria's cheeks flushed. I manage fine. I don't need... Maria, please listen. I did some research. I hope you don't mind. I know about your husband's medical bills. I know how much you owe. She looked down at her hands. That's private. I want to pay off your debt. All of it, Maria's head snapped up. What? No, absolutely not. That's too much. I can't accept that. Why not? Because it's charity. Because I'm not some project for you to feel good about. Her voice was sharp, protective. Richard understood. She had her pride. She'd been working herself to the bone to handle her problems alone. Accepting help felt like admitting defeat. It's not charity, Richard said quietly. It's gratitude. And something else. Something I'm not very good at admitting. He paused. It's guilt. Guilt? Maria looked confused. Richard stood and walked to the window. The man who tried to kill me, Vincent Chen, I destroyed his life. I didn't just punish him for stealing. I made sure he could never recover. I was ruthless. I wanted to send a message. And I never once thought about him as a person, as someone with a family, with problems, with reasons for what he did. He turned back to face them. I've spent my career crushing people, taking what I wanted, winning at any cost. And I never stopped to think about the human cost, the families I've hurt, the lives I've changed. Sophia spoke up, her young voice clear. You can't change the past, Mr. Morrison. My papa used to say that. But you can change what you do tomorrow. Richard felt something tighten in his chest. Wisdom from an 8-year-old. You're right, Sophia. So here's what I want to do. Maria, I want to pay off your debt. Not as charity, but as the first step in me changing the way I do business. I want to hire you as well. Not as a cleaning lady, but as an advisor. Maria laughed, but it sounded almost hysterical. An advisor? Mr. Morrison, I clean toilets. I stock shelves. What could I possibly advise you on? Reality, Richard said simply. I've been so far removed from real life for so long, I've forgotten what it's like. I need someone who understands what it means to struggle. To work 3 jobs. To choose between medicine and groceries. I need someone who can tell me when my business decisions hurt real people. You're serious, Maria whispered. Completely serious. You keep your current position if you want it, but with reduced hours and better pay. And you meet with me twice a week to review major business decisions. You tell me what you think. You keep me grounded. Maria looked at Sophia, then back at Richard. Tears were streaming down her face now. I don't know what to say. Say yes, Richard said. Please, let me start making things right. Over the next few weeks, everything changed. Richard paid off Maria's medical debt, all $215,000 of it. He restructured her position, giving her a real salary with benefits. Health insurance. Paid vacation, things she'd never had before. The first time Maria came to one of their meetings, she sat in his office looking terrified. Richard had just finished presenting a plan to acquire a struggling manufacturing company. So what do you think? He asked her. You want my opinion, really? Really. Maria took a deep breath. I think you should visit the factory first. Meet the people who work there. Find out why it's struggling. Maybe there's a way to help it succeed instead of just buying it and breaking it apart. Richard stared at her. It was such a simple suggestion, but it was something he would never have thought to do. In his world, you looked at spreadsheets and profit margins. You didn't visit factories. You didn't meet workers, okay, he said. Let's go together. You and me, tomorrow. The factory visit changed everything. Richard met families who'd worked there for generations. He saw equipment that was outdated but still functional. He talked to managers who had ideas for improvements but no capital to implement them. Instead of buying the company and liquidating it, Richard invested in it. New equipment, better processes, training programs. It took 6 months, but the factory turned profitable. Not massively, but enough to sustain itself and keep people employed. It was the first time Richard had built something up instead of tearing it down. It felt different, better. Meanwhile, Sophia was thriving. Richard had started visiting them regularly. He went to Sophia's school plays and science fairs. He helped her with math homework. He became part of their small family. 6 months after the bombing attempt, Richard stood in a courtroom watching Vincent Chen receive his sentence. 25 years in federal prison. The judge had been harsh, calling the crime calculated and premeditated. Vincent had shown no remorse during the trial. He'd stared at Richard with cold hatred every single day. But something had changed in Richard during those 6 months. As he watched Vincent being led away in handcuffs, he didn't feel victorious. He felt sad. Sad for the waste of it all. Sad for the chain of events that had led them both to this moment. After the sentencing, Richard did something unexpected. He contacted Vincent's lawyer and asked if Vincent would accept a visitor. The lawyer was skeptical, but he passed along the message. 2 weeks later, Richard sat in a prison visiting room waiting. The room was cold and sterile, smelling of disinfectant and despair. Other visitors sat at other tables talking in hushed voices with inmates wearing orange jumpsuits. Vincent was brought in by a guard. He looked thinner, older. His hair had more gray in it. When he saw Richard, his face hardened. "Come to gloat?" Vincent asked, sitting down across from him. "No," Richard said quietly. "I came to apologize." Vincent laughed bitterly. "Apologize? You're kidding me. I'm not. What you did was wrong. Trying to kill me was wrong. But I played a part in bringing you to that point. I destroyed you, Vincent, and I did it deliberately. Not just to punish you for stealing, but to make an example of you. To show everyone what happens when you cross me. You think an apology changes anything?" Vincent's voice was full of rage. "You think saying sorry gives me my life back?" "No," Richard admitted. "Nothing gives you your life back. Just like nothing gives me back the person I used to be before I became so ruthless. We both lost something." Vincent was quiet for a moment. Then he leaned forward. "You want to know why I stole from you? My daughter had leukemia. The treatment wasn't covered by our insurance. I was desperate. I took the money to save my child's life." Richard felt like he'd been punched in the stomach. "I didn't know. You never asked. You just assumed I was greedy. That I was a thief. You never once asked why. Did your daughter?" Richard couldn't finish the question. "She survived. She's 12 now and cancer-free, but she doesn't have a father. Because I'm in here for the next 25 years. Because I let hate consume me after you destroyed my life." They sat in silence. Around them, other conversations continued. A mother crying with her son. A wife holding her husband's hands across the table. Lives broken and struggling to find connection through barriers. "I can't give you those years back," Richard finally said. "But I can make sure your daughter is taken care of. I can set up a trust fund for her education. Make sure she has what she needs." Vincent's eyes filled with tears. "Why would you do that?" "Because an 8-year-old girl taught me that doing the right thing matters even when it's hard. Even when it's scary. Your daughter shouldn't suffer because we both made terrible choices." For the first time, Vincent's expression softened. "You've changed." "I'm trying to," Richard said. "Every day I'm trying to be better than I was." After leaving the prison, Richard felt lighter somehow. He couldn't change the past. Vincent would still serve his sentence. But maybe something good could still come from all this pain. He threw himself into changing his business practices. He met with every company he was considering acquiring. He talked to employees, not just executives. He started looking for ways to build up instead of tear down. His board of directors thought he had lost his mind. His profits dropped slightly in the first quarter. Some investors pulled out saying he'd gone soft, but other investors, ones who cared about ethical business practices, started reaching out. Companies wanted to work with him now. Knowing he wouldn't destroy them, Maria had become invaluable. She attended meetings and offered perspectives Richard would never have considered. She asked questions like, "How will this affect the workers? And what happens to their families if this plant closes?" She kept him honest. Sophia continued to amaze him. Now 9 years old, she'd started a program at her school collecting books for kids in low-income neighborhoods. When Richard asked her why, she said simply, "Because everyone deserves a chance to learn." One evening, Richard invited Maria and Sophia to dinner at his penthouse apartment. It was the first time they'd seen where he lived. Sophia's mouth fell open when she walked in. "You live here all by yourself?" she asked, staring at the huge space. "Yes," Richard said, suddenly seeing it through her eyes. The apartment was 4,000 square feet. 3 bedrooms that were never used. A formal dining room where he never ate. A kitchen full of expensive appliances he never touched. "It's too big, isn't it?" "It's lonely," Sophia said with the blunt honesty of a child. She was right. It was lonely. Richard had money, success, power, but he lived alone in a beautiful prison of his own making. They ate pizza on the couch, all 3 of them, watching a movie Sophia wanted to see. It was the best evening Richard had spent in his apartment since he'd bought it 5 years ago. "Can I ask you something?" Maria said during a quiet moment in the movie. "Why are you doing all this, really?" "It's more than just gratitude for Sophia warning you." Richard thought about how to answer. "You know, before the bombing, I thought I had everything figured out. I was successful. Rich. Powerful. I thought that meant I was winning at life. He looked at Sophia, who had fallen asleep against her mother's shoulder. But I was empty inside. I had no real friends, no family. No one who cared about me as a person, only as a business connection. I was so focused on winning that I forgot why I was playing the game. And now? Maria asked. Now I'm learning that success isn't about how much money you have or how many people fear you. It's about connection, purpose, making the world a little bit better instead of just taking what you can from it. Maria smiled. Sophia's father would have liked you. The new you, I mean. Tell me about him, Richard said. Maria talked for over an hour about her late husband, Diego. He'd been a construction worker, strong and kind. He'd worked long hours in the hot sun to provide for his family. When he got sick, he'd fought hard, not for himself, but because he didn't want to leave Maria and Sophia alone. He made me promise something before he died, Maria said, wiping her eyes. He made me promise to make sure Sophia got a good education, to make sure she had opportunities we never had. That's why I work so hard. It's the last thing I can do for him. Richard understood then why Maria had been so hesitant to accept his help. It wasn't just pride. It was love. She wanted to fulfill her promise to her husband on her own. You're honoring him, Richard said, by working so hard, by raising such an incredible daughter. He'd be proud of you. Over the next year, Richard's transformation continued. He started a foundation focused on helping families dealing with medical debt. He created scholarship programs for kids like Sophia, smart children from low-income families. He partnered with other businesses to create fair-wage jobs with real benefits. His company became known not for ruthless tactics, but for ethical practices. He wasn't as rich as he'd been at his peak, but he was richer in ways that mattered more. He also started therapy. Unpacking years of focusing only on success and power wasn't easy. His therapist helped him understand that he'd been using work and money to fill a void inside himself. A void that came from losing his own parents young and never dealing with that grief. He'd been trying to prove something to people who weren't even alive to see it. Sophia turned 10, and Richard threw her a birthday party at a community center. Not an expensive catered affair. Just kids from her school, simple decorations, pizza and cake. Sophia's face glowed with happiness as she played games with her friends. Best birthday ever, she told Richard, hugging him tight. Richard felt his eyes sting with tears. A year and a half ago, he wouldn't have cared about a child's birthday party. Now it felt like the most important event of the month. Maria finished her GED and enrolled in community college, studying business administration. She was nervous at first, the oldest student in most of her classes. But she was brilliant, Richard discovered. She had a natural understanding of how businesses worked and how decisions affected real people. You should think about getting your bachelor's degree, Richard told her after she aced her first semester. Maybe even an MBA eventually, Maria laughed. Me with an MBA? That's crazy. Why? You're smart. You work hard. You have real-world experience most MBA students never get. I'm 37 years old. So? My mother always said you're never too old to become who you want to be. Richard paused. Actually, that's a lie. My mother never said that. But she should have. And I'm saying it now. 2 years after the bombing attempt, Richard stood at a podium in front of 200 people. The ballroom of the downtown hotel was decorated with simple elegance. On the stage behind him sat Maria and Sophia, both dressed in their best clothes. Sophia, now 10 years old, kept sneaking glances at the crowd with barely contained excitement. 2 years ago, Richard began, someone tried to kill me, a bomb under my car. I should have died that day. But I didn't, because a brave little girl risked her safety to warn a stranger about danger. He gestured to Sophia, who blushed as people turned to look at her. That girl, Sophia Rodriguez, saved my life. But she did more than that. She changed my life. She taught me that courage isn't about being fearless. It's about doing the right thing even when you're scared. It's about caring enough about another person to take a risk. Richard paused, looking at his notes, then decided to ignore them. He wanted to speak from his heart. I was a terrible person before that day. Successful, yes. Rich, yes, but terrible. I built my fortune by crushing people, by taking advantage of their desperation, by caring only about winning, never about who I hurt along the way. LD myself, it was just business. That it wasn't personal, but it was personal to the people I destroyed. It was personal to their families. The room was silent. Many people in the audience knew the old Richard. They remembered his ruthlessness. Some had been on the receiving end of it. The man who tried to kill me is in prison now. 25 years. And you know what? I contributed to putting him there long before he built that bomb. I destroyed his life first. I made sure he could never recover. I did it deliberately, as a warning to others. And I never once asked myself if what I was doing was right. I only cared if it was profitable. Richard saw some uncomfortable shifting in the audience. Good. People should be uncomfortable. He was, but Sophia didn't know any of that. She didn't know I was rich or important. She just knew someone was in danger and she had to help. That simple act of kindness saved my life and gave me a chance to become better. He turned to look at Sophia and Maria. That's why I'm establishing the Sofia Rodriguez Courage Scholarship. This scholarship will help children from low-income families attend college. But it's not just about grades or test scores. It's for kids who show courage. Kids who help others. Kids who do the right thing even when it's hard. Applause filled the room. Sophia's face was bright red, but she was smiling. The first recipient of this scholarship is, of course, Sophia herself. But there will be many more. Starting next year, we'll award 10 scholarships. Then 20, then more. Because there are a lot of brave kids out there who deserve a chance. After the ceremony, people came up to congratulate Sophia. News cameras wanted interviews. Sophia handled it all with grace, politely answering questions and thanking everyone. How does it feel to be a hero? One reporter asked her. Sophia thought about it seriously. I'm not a hero. I just did what anyone should do. If you see someone in danger, you help them. That's just being a good person, the reporter pressed on. But you saved a millionaire's life. That's pretty special. He's not just a millionaire, Sophia said firmly. He's my friend. He's Mr. Richard. And every life matters whether they're rich or poor. The reporter seemed surprised by the wisdom coming from a 10-year-old. But Richard wasn't surprised anymore. Sophia had always been wise beyond her years. Later that evening, Richard, Maria, and Sophia went back to Maria's apartment. It was a new apartment now in a better neighborhood, but still modest. Maria had insisted on something practical, not fancy. Old habits died hard. They celebrated with ice cream sundaes at the small kitchen table. Sophia had chocolate sauce all over her face, talking excitedly about the scholarship and the ceremony. Did you see all those people, Mama? And the reporters. And there was a camera crew. Maria laughed, wiping chocolate off her daughter's chin. Yes, Mia, I saw. You did great. After Sophia went to bed, Maria and Richard sat on the couch with coffee. It had become their ritual. Coffee and conversation, processing the day. You didn't have to do all this, Maria said quietly. The scholarship, the ceremony, everything? Yes, I did, Richard replied. Not just because Sophia saved my life. Because she showed me a better way to live, Maria smiled. She is pretty special, isn't she? She gets it from her mother. Maria shook her head. She gets it from her father. Diego was the kindest person I ever knew. Even when he was dying, he worried about everyone else. Made sure I knew how to handle the bills. Made sure Sophia knew he loved her. Made me promise to keep going, to not let grief stop me from living. You've honored that promise, Richard said. Look at you, working full-time at my company, taking college classes, raising an incredible daughter. Diego would be so proud. I hope so, Maria whispered. I miss him every day. They sat in comfortable silence. Through the walls, they could hear neighbors living their lives. A baby crying, someone playing music, normal sounds of people just trying to get by. Can I tell you something? Richard asked. Something I haven't told anyone? Of course. I was going to retire before the bombing. I was 52, rich beyond measure, and miserable. I had no purpose. No real friends, no family. I was planning to just disappear. Buy an island somewhere and waste away in luxury. He looked at his coffee cup. If Vincent's bomb had worked, honestly, I don't think many people would have really mourned me. They would have mourned the loss of a business connection. But not the person, because no one really knew the person. Maria put her hand on his arm. And now? Now I have a reason to get up in the morning. I have people I care about who care about me. I have purpose. I'm trying to repair some of the damage I did. It's not enough. It'll never be enough. But it's something. It's a lot more than something, Maria said firmly. Look at what you've done. The foundation helping families with medical debt. The scholarship program. The way you changed your business. You've helped thousands of people. Only because you and Sophia showed me how. A few months later, Richard did something that surprised everyone. He visited Vincent in prison again. This time, Vincent seemed less hostile. Your daughter's trust fund is all set up, Richard told him. She'll have money for college, graduate school if she wants, a down payment on a house someday. She's doing well, by the way. I've been getting updates. She's a good student, plays violin, wants to be a doctor. Vincent's eyes filled with tears. You're really doing this? Even after I tried to kill you? I told you I would, and I keep my promises now. Why? Vincent asked. I don't understand why. Richard thought about how to explain. Because hate doesn't have to be the end of the story. Because your daughter shouldn't suffer for our mistakes. Because I'm trying to be the kind of person who helps instead of hurts. I'm sorry, Vincent said suddenly, for trying to kill you, for letting hate control me. I wasted so much time planning revenge when I could have been finding a way back to my family. I'm sorry too, Richard said. For destroying you instead of helping you, for never asking why you stole, just assuming you were greedy. We both made terrible choices. They talked for an hour. It wasn't quite forgiveness, not yet, but it was a start, a recognition that they were both human, both flawed, both capable of better. Over the next year, Richard's foundation grew. They helped over 300 families pay off medical debt. The scholarship program expanded to 15 recipients. Companies started calling, wanting to know how Richard had transformed his business while staying profitable. He started giving talks about ethical business practices, about treating employees as people rather than resources. Sophia continued to excel. She started a mentoring program at her school, helping younger kids with their homework. Everyone needs help sometimes, she explained to Richard. That's not weakness. That's just being human. Maria finished her associate degree and transferred to a 4-year university. She was studying business with a focus on organizational ethics. Her goal was to help other companies transform the way Richard's had. You're going to be amazing, Richard told her as she prepared for her first day at university. Better than me, probably. Different than you, Maria corrected. We're both learning, both growing. On the 2-year anniversary of the bombing, Richard didn't have a big ceremony. Instead, he spent the day quietly. He visited the parking garage where it had happened, standing at the spot where Sophia had grabbed his arm and changed everything. He thought about the person he'd been that day. Arrogant, ruthless, empty. That person had died in a way, even if the bomb hadn't gone off. The person standing here now was different. Not perfect, but better. Still learning, still growing. His phone buzzed. A text from Sophia. Don't forget you're coming to my science fair tonight. I made a volcano and it's awesome. Richard smiled. He'd been to more school events in the past 2 years than most parents attend in a lifetime. And he loved everyone. He texted back, wouldn't miss it for the world. As he left the garage, Richard passed a homeless man sitting by the entrance. The old Richard would have walked past without seeing him. The new Richard stopped. Excuse me, sir. Have you eaten today? The man looked up surprised. Not yet. Richard pulled out his wallet and handed the man 2 20s. There's a diner around the corner. Tell them Richard sent you. They'll take care of you. God bless you, the man said. Someone already did, Richard replied. A 10-year-old girl taught me how to be human again. That evening, Richard stood in a crowded school gymnasium watching Sophia present her volcano project. She explained the science behind it with confidence and enthusiasm. When the volcano erupted, spraying vinegar and baking soda foam, the other kids cheered. Maria stood beside Richard, beaming with pride. She's going to change the world someday, she said. She already has, Richard replied. She changed mine. After the science fair, they went for ice cream. Sophia got chocolate chip and a waffle cone and told them all about her plans to be a forensic scientist now, instead of a detective. What changed your mind? Richard asked. I read about DNA evidence and how it helps solve crimes. Science is so cool. You can figure out the truth by looking at tiny little things. It's like being a detective, but with a microscope. You'll be brilliant at it, Richard said. As they walked back to the car, Sophia took Richard's hand on one side and her mother's on the other. They swung her between them and she laughed. A normal moment. A family moment. Richard thought about how close he'd come to missing all of this. If Sophia hadn't been brave,